downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your host, Andrew T. Evans, with special guest, Chris Stefanick.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Buckeye Leafcast. I'm your host, Mr. Andy Evans, and joining me, as he always does for this rendition of the Leafcast, OSU Buckeye basketball style for today, the Intergalactic Buckeye Fan, the one and only Mr. Chris Stefanick.
Andy, so feels so good to be back across the mic looking at you. So let's get this going.
I'm telling you what, man, it's been at least a couple months. I think the last time we did one was a spring game rendition, and we're gonna switch things up today. I feel a little weird. Not only are we doing one in June, but we're gonna be talking about basketball. Chris, how often have we done this?
Not very often, that's for sure. But I think just a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there, maybe. I don't know that we've ever dedicated a show to it, though.
Clearly, it's been that long since we talked about OSU basketball. And also, Chris, I would like to welcome onto the show a special guest, good buddy of mine, Brandon Richey. He's going to be sitting alongside of us today, maybe interjecting a time or two on this subject, although I should let all of the Buckeye Leafcast and just Buckeye fans in general out there know that Mr. Richey is a Michigan fan. So I just want to get that out of the way. Mr. Richey, why don't you say hello to all the fine Buckeye fans out there right now?
How does one introduce oneself with that fine introduction?
Hey, I'm keeping it real, baby. Keeping it real to the listeners.
Yeah, you see my dilemma every week now. So.
Well, it's you introduce someone with a very downtrodden, very.
I'm a very humble guy. What can I say, dude? Come on, you know me.
You exude humbleness. I see that. I see that. But no, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate that. Just trying to take in everything I can as Andy and I work towards actually our own endeavors here in the very near future. So, while OSU anything. Specifically basketball is not my specialty. I appreciate the opportunity to just be an observer here. But if any and all Michigan questions, I would happily field those.
I'm sure you would, sir. Yes, this is a guy that grew up as a Michigan fan. So, Chris, we might have our hands full today. That's all I got to say.
Right. Well, now we have an excuse for any parts of the podcast that the listeners don't like. It's his fault. The Michigan guy.
The built-in scapegoat.
Right, exactly.
I never thought of it that way, but okay, go me. Good thinking on that one. But yeah, Chris, let's talk a little bit of Ohio State basketball here. As everyone out there knows by now, and if you haven't, you've been living in a cave under a rock. You were taking a crap in the bathroom for way too long because you had too much chicken wings for dinner, breakfast, lunch for the last couple of weeks. But Thad Matta, 13 years at Ohio State, is now out. He is no longer the head coach of the men's basketball team at Ohio State. And in comes Chris Holtmann, a guy with a little bit of experience, ironically enough, at Butler, as did Thad Matta before he came to Ohio State. But first off, let's talk about Thad Matta. I want to get your opinion. And Brandon, if you want to sound off on this too, please do. What the hell happened? I mean, we know that the last, 4 seasons after Matta took his team to the Elite Eight, let's not forget that 2013 season, they went to the Elite Eight. Had a chance to repeat 2 straight Final Fours, but got beat by Wichita State. And after that, things just kind of, went downhill. They just progressively got worse for Thad Matta, and it all seemed to culminate in a specific occurrence. But I want to get your opinion on really what you saw the last few seasons, what you think led to Thad Matta's firing, and, kind of how you feel about the whole thing.
Yeah, well, first let me just start by saying that Thad Matta was a hell of a coach, and what he did for the program was tremendous. I mean, the program was not in a good shape when he came in, and he took it to a whole nother level, if not a couple levels higher. If easily top 2 coach in the program's history, if not
easily,
if not the top coach,
if not the top. Yep.
So let me just say that. And but having said that, he set the bar really high for himself and then wasn't able to clear it. There was a big change over the last few years. And unfortunately, it looks like a lot of it was just health related. So I think he's had 4 or 5 back surgeries in his life.
Something like that. Yeah.
And one that he had a few years ago went badly. It was not successful, and he got a condition called dropped foot.
Yes. That's been some years ago too, I believe.
Right. And so basically he sits down through practice, sits down through the majority of the games. He's not able to be energetic and is just in a lot of pain. And I don't know that so much had a whole lot to do with the program's success, but it did have a lot to do with him not getting out on the road and doing the recruiting, winning those recruiting battles like he had in the past. So, one of the criticisms of Thad is he's not the greatest developer of talent. Players come to Ohio State and they don't seem to get much better than when they arrived. And the way he's been successful is he's brought in all these guys that were phenomenal NBA talent kind of players. He's had just a ton of first-round draft picks.
D'Angelo Russell a couple of years ago.
Right, the most recent being D'Angelo Russell. But since he's had all this pain and hasn't been able to get out and recruit, he's lost all those battles, and he's getting guys that not only are not one and done NBA, first round of the draft kind of players like D'Angelo Russell. I mean, he's not even getting Big Ten players lately. I mean, it's he's getting guys. You look at their other offers, and it's they have offers from Bowling Green and Ball State, and it's what?
So really, one of the big reasons that you saw the decline at Ohio State was recruiting. And I completely agree with you on that point. You can even, really, if you go back to this last class that he got, which was supposed to be like a top 5 class with Daniel Giddens and Mickey Mitchell and A.J. Harris and Jaquan Lyle. That was supposed to be like this next big class that came in and brought and resurged Thad Matta in the Ohio State basketball program. Not to say it was down in the dumps at that time, because it was still okay. Yeah, they had a couple of seasons there where they got beaten the first round of the NCAA tournament against Dayton, and then they lost badly the next season in the second round against Arizona. The one year in which they had NBA talent in D'Angelo Russell, who was a one and done. But that class was really that was it. That was the downfall. I mean, that class right there, for whatever reason, being a top 5 class, could probably go down as his worst recruiting effort of all time, because I think ultimately it led to his to whatever you want to call this, his dismissal, his firing, his stepping down, him not being the coach anymore at Ohio State.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely the talented player you brought in was just not Big Ten talent, caliber players. And, like I said, it's you just could look at the offers the kids had and tell that. So,
what I think is funny is there's one kid, that Justin Aaron's kid. He's one of those kids you're talking about, where he had, offers from Wright State, and I think Columbus State may have been the only other school to offer him. And yeah, I think they do actually. But yeah, no, of course I'm being slightly facetious, but here's a kid from Versailles, not highly recruited. He's a 3-star guy. And Ohio State is without a doubt the biggest offer he's got. And then once Thad Matta says, no, I'm stepping down, whatever, I'm no longer the coach. Here's a kid that decides he doesn't want to be, go play basketball at Ohio State anymore. And I just think that is pretty funny, but that's just my own silly little opinion. So sorry to interject, but please continue.
Yeah. And one of the other things, one of it was Matta didn't have the energy to get out there and be as enthusiastic of a recruiter, and maybe wasn't going on the road as much as he had in the past. The other thing was negative recruiting. It was well documented that, several cases where other schools were negative recruiting against him. Now, negative recruiting occurs all the time. And when I say negative recruiting, what I mean is, you're on a visit at Michigan State and they're saying bad things about Ohio State to try to get you to go to Michigan State, that sort of thing. It's talking negative about another program. in order to try to get you to come to that school. So that's nothing new.
Pretty crappy,
yeah, you face it all the time. But the specific negative recruiting that they were using against Thad was that they said, his health is really bad, which was true. And, a Google search could confirm that for any of the recruits, and that he was ready to retire. This was like his last year. He was going to retire. You don't want to go play for him. And I mean, do I know that that's what swayed the kids? Why he wasn't able to get these top kids? Who knows? But that was one of the things that was being used against him over and over. And, I think it must have had a role, because you look at the kind of kids he was bringing in early on, and then what he was doing at the end, and it was, pretty much night and day. So something changed.
So it doesn't sound like you're of the opinion or belief, like my good Michigan friend here, Mr. Richey, that Thad Matta was feigning some sort of illness, as it was believed with Urban Meyer, which there was, some speculation and stories out there that he claimed I have chest pains, not feeling good, I need to take time off for my health kind of thing. And then, a year later, he's the coach of Ohio State. Thad Matta, I truly do believe was, had some serious health issues that were keeping him back.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's ridiculous. He isn't feigning anything.
Yeah, no, I think Mr. Richey here is just being slightly facetious himself in that assertion. Or do you really believe that? Do you think Thad Matta was really feigning some sort of illness to step down as coach because he was sick and tired of being sick and tired?
And again, it's not that I was interjecting with any kind of conspiracy theory or anything like that. It was just, do you, as two very staunch Ohio State fans of all sports therein, feel that there is any kind of correlation between what happened with Meyer and now with Matta? That was the question. I was not interjecting any kind of, any of my own theories, because quite frankly, I like beating Ohio State on the basketball court. I like beating them any chance Michigan has. So I was just curious.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to poke and prod at anyone's health. Absolutely not. But I was just curious, as two Ohio State fans, did you once hearing about Thad Matta's departure, did the thought ever cross your mind? Well, that's interesting.
No, I can see what you're saying, being a weird kind of happenstance, if you will, that, Thad Matta was, well, and that's the thing. He supposedly retired, stepped down, whatever, because he was sick. Or just not feeling well. And like Chris said, I mean, he's had back surgeries. He's had this drop foot deal. And I really do think, though, that it does seem ironic in a sense that Urban Meyer said what he said, but yet he's still the coach. But with Thad Matta, it's completely different. I mean, Thad Matta just, unfortunately just had crappy back and crappy back surgeries. And, it just led to, like Chris said, him not having just the full amount of energy and being able to commit towards not only coaching but recruiting and traveling and doing all that kind of stuff.
And I really feel like you two have laid out a pretty significant reasoning as toward why he stepped down. Yeah, and I get it. If you have significant health issues, specifically if you're not able to recruit, while you were laying out his inability, Thad Matta rather, his inability to recruit as of late, I drew the direct connection to Brady Hoke. That guy could recruit. He couldn't develop to save his life and or wear a headset. And that is evidenced by the fact that his best year was his first year with Rich Rod's recruits. Everybody he recruited thereafter was just as good as the day they showed up the first day. They never were developed any further past that point. Even further evidenced by the fact that you had several walk-ons now playing in the, I take that back. Two just retired from the NFL early. we're talking walk-ons at the University of Michigan. Now, I'm not, again, as a 5'2" person who has no aspirations, knew from a very early on time in his life that, maybe the NFL, NBA, maybe none of these big sports arenas, maybe that's just not cut out for you. Or maybe you're not cut out for them, more specifically.
Yeah.
I get it. And I'm not trying to belabor a point that these individuals made poor decisions or they were playing outside their abilities, anything like that. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. But if you're playing for the University of Michigan and it's an historically great, storied football arena for coaching thereafter, what have you, if you have walk-ons as your star players, which there were several with Brady Hoke, what does that say about your ability to develop? And again, while you and Andy were discussing Thad Matta's decline, if you will, dare I say,
No, definitely.
That's all I could think about was Brady Hoke, because he's a likable guy,
right?
But it all comes down to, are you going to win ball games,
right?
Or are you just a likable guy,
right? And I completely see your point in making that correlation, and that was an issue, obviously, with Brady Hoke, was bringing in talented classes. You look at some of his recruiting classes, and they were actually pretty
stout.
good. With Thad Matta, certainly, brought in some talented players, but, Chris, would you not say that D'Angelo Russell didn't really develop into the kind of talent that you thought he would be, even though, yes, he was only there for 1 year? And in today's day and age of college basketball, if you are that type of talent, I mean, you have to come just gangbusters out of the box and blow people out of the water the first year that you're there. And I was not blown away by D'Angelo Russell. Was he good? Yeah. Did he help Ohio State win some games? Yeah. Was he this super awesome, talented guy that I thought, oh, man, he's going to go to the NBA and just tear it up? Absolutely not. Was that Thad Matta's fault? Is it the system's fault? Was it D'Angelo Russell's fault? I mean, I guess blame could be laid everywhere. But I do agree that Thad did not seem to develop the talent as well as he could have and should have. Guys like Amir Williams and Shannon Scott. I mean, these two guys, Chris and Brandon, were McDonald's high school All-Americans. McDonald's high school All-Americans, and they were probably worse after they left after 4 years at Ohio State than they were when they got there. Right. And that kind of stuff, you shake your head at when you see Thad Matta and some of the kids that he did or rather did not develop. I don't know. Your thoughts, dude.
Well, so let me give you an example. This is something that is completely objective, right? So a lot of this stuff is subjective. Was he better the day he left than the day he arrived on the basketball court? I mean, we could get into stats and stuff like that, but I mean, that stuff, it's a lot of it's subjective. Here's something objective. Deshaun Thomas, an offensive wonderkind, I mean, he was just a phenomenal offensive talent at Ohio State.
Yeah.
Left early for the NBA.
1 year early, sure.
Quick interjection. What is the current requirement? Is it 1 year?
1 year in college.
1 year. Interesting. Okay.
Okay. So he leaves early for the NBA. The NBA draft, the what do they call it? The combine. The combine for the draft.
Yeah. Yeah.
He had the highest percent body fat of anybody at the combine. Hi. That's an objective thing. And this is a wing player. This isn't like a center.
Right.
We're not talking about, somebody like Terrence Dials or something down there, or JJ Solinger. This is a freaking wing at the highest percent body fat. And I wish I could
eat it up.
Yeah, I wish I could remember the guy's name, but it was like, I think it was the year prior. I think it was like 2 years in a row. Ohio State had another one of their star players go to the NBA, left early, and he had the highest percent body fat of anybody in the combine. So it was like 2 years in a row they had.
The year before Thomas, it would have been Solinger. I would think that would have had the highest amount of body fat. I would think.
I'm trying to remember who it was, but there was two players with the highest, and it's ridiculous. It's like, you have so much money and you can do that. That's the best you can do with your weight program.
Right.
It's like, meanwhile, like Urban Meyer, he's got like elite weight training program with Mickey Marotti. They got photos of these guys coming in. You know, it was like relatively skinny little high school football players or fat, you know, high school linemen. Right. And like not even like 12 months later, they look like Greek gods. You know, they could take these photos with their shirts off and riding Harleys and stuff. And it's like the transformation's huge.
Brandon's rolling your eyes right now, and you just called Ohio State players Greek gods, by the way. So,
I mean, no, I understand. I mean, 300 was an amazing movie, but if we're getting down to brass tacks, the fact of the matter is the old adage of ab-laden warriors is just absolutely farce. You would bleed out immediately.
You're missing the point. It's not meant to be taken literally.
Again, I was not taking what you said literally. It was just kind of one of those things. It was like,
and I'm not talking about the guys who fought in the war. I'm talking about the gods on Mount Olympus. Damn it! And they did have rippling abs.
There you go. Okay, I will shut up now, please.
All right, so. You know, that right there. And I mean, look at like take Mark Loving. You know, Mark Loving's been, you know, God forbid, the face of the program the last few years. Yep. I mean, that guy's like looks like freaking noodle arms out there. I mean, I hate to say it because, you know, I mean, maybe he's some people just can't put on muscle mass. You know, and as hard as they try, as much as they eat, as much as they hit the gym, they just can't put on muscle mass. So, I mean, maybe he's one of these guys. I don't know. But the fact that the weight program, none of the guys look great when they're going through, you know, this program. None of them end up looking like they've added muscle, like they're toned, and they're, you know, coming in last place of all the players of the combine as far as their fitness goes. Something's clearly wrong, you know, and that's just that like objective measure of, you know, body fat. You know, we could see with our eyes what they're doing on the basketball court, their basketball abilities. Frankly, he's never been that great at that. But before, he was at least getting NBA level talent, and so then that was enough to get it done, to get Ohio State to a different level, to get them to Final Fours and national championship games and the like. But you know, that slipped.
It did. And when he got a Deshaun Thomas, who I like to call the gun, because his freshman year, it was like whenever he got the ball, he shot it. And he shot it. He would never pass it. As soon as he got the ball, he'd shoot it. He'd just gun it up there, just fire away. So he's always going to be the gun to me. But nonetheless, you know, Deshaun Thomas was a highly, you know, recruited kid out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Of course, Jared Solinger was one of the most highly sought after kids in the country when he came out of Northland High School.
I think he was wasn't he number one player overall in the country, if not number two?
He might have. I tell you what, if he wasn't number one, I think he was legitimately one of the top, like big men.
He was like one or two.
One of the top players overall, in the country. I mean, he was that sought after. So those were the kind of kids, though, that Thad started moving away from. Like, if you look at let's look at the last really great team there that Jared Solinger was a part of in 2012. You could even go the next year in 2013 when they made it to the Elite Eight, and they didn't have Solinger. But even that 2010-2011 team that lost like 2 games going into the NCAA tournament and were the number 1 overall seed in the entire tournament. I mean, hands down, best team in the country. Dude, look at all of the kids that were on that team, and they were, without a doubt, some of the best conglomeration of kids that he could have gotten. And you want to know what? They were primarily all from Ohio, except for Deshaun Thomas, who was one state over. I mean, Diebler, Ohio. Kraft, Solinger, Buford, you know, all Ohio. David Light, Ohio. You know, and I noticed this pattern, and gonna throw some football in there for my boy Brandon too. Urban Meyer's kind of doing the same thing, where he's going away from these Ohio kids, and Thad Matta started doing that. You know, he wanted to go down to Texas and get Austin Grandstaff. He wanted to go down to Georgia and get guys like Shannon Scott and Daniel Gibbons. You know,
he was doing that because he wasn't getting the top Ohio kids. I mean, Luke Kennard never even considered Ohio State.
I know.
Never even considered it. Who was the guy at Akron St. Vincent Mary? Carlton Bragg.
Yeah.
You're talking about guys that are like top 5, top 10 in the country overall.
Yes. And how do you let kids? And I understand you only got a limited number of scholarships. Don't get me wrong. You only have 3.
No, but those are guys you take. I mean, you take if you only have one scholarship. I don't care who else out there is saying they want to come play for you. You take Luke Kennard. You're like, sorry, we're going with Luke Kennard.
Absolutely.
I don't care who you are. We're going with Luke Kennard.
Yes.
He didn't want to come. There was nothing Matta could do. That guy was not going to come play at Ohio State, and that's what did him in, though. He was getting those guys in the past. He did get, Luke Kennard was on the same level as far as recruiting ranking goes as J.J. Solinger, but he got
Jared.
Well,
and
Jared.
JJ, kind of.
Yeah. Jared Solinger, rather.
Yeah.
But he wasn't able to get the Luke Kennards and stuff. So, if you only get the top talent in Ohio, you're going to be pretty good because Ohio produces so many quality basketball players. So, and Thad was able to go out and get some stars, famously Greg Oden and Mike Conley, both from Indiana, I believe.
Yes, sir. Indianapolis North High School.
So, he had success doing that in the past too, getting, elite talent from out of state as well. But, even if you can't get that, if you just get the top, 3-4 players in Ohio every year, you're going to be pretty good.
You're building a team. You're building a national championship contending team as far as I'm concerned.
Well, there's going to be years when the stars align and you have a Luke Kennard or you have a Jared Solinger or something like that. So if you're getting the top 3 or 4 kids, when you end up getting kids like that, because every year there's not a Luke Kennard coming out of Ohio, right? But
no, very true.
But when you do, if you manage to get 2 or 3 of those guys in the same, that end up playing together, they don't have to be in the same class, but within 2 or 3 years of each other, so they end up playing together on the same team. That's when you can have that national championship magic, like you talked about. That team that was number 1 overall with John Threebler and Jared Solinger and David Lighty and all this. I mean, that team was so good, and I still contend that they were the number 1 team in the country that year. They were the best team. Yep. They just, they lost a game. That happens. The best teams in the country, in the world, will sometimes lose a game.
Yep.
But you're one and done in the tournament.
Yep. Exactly.
So, question for you, Chris. Just point of reference in essence of level setting. So the biggest in-state opponent, if you will, in terms of recruiting, Xavier?
Yeah, Xavier.
I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, I'd say Cincinnati's probably.
Yeah, I mean,
Cincinnati's bigger, I would say.
Yeah.
Don't forget about Dayton.
Oh, the Flyers. Well, they ain't got Archie, our boy Archie. Let's talk about that real quick, dude. I mean, okay, so Thad Matta, let's go back now and kind of sum up the last few months here, Chris. So the day of the Rutgers game the first round of the Big Ten Conference Tournament, just a few hours before tip-off, Gene Smith comes out and says, Thad Matta is our man. He is the guy for the job. I got full faith in him. Blah, 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 blah. Fast forward that night, Ohio State, 11th seeded in the Big Ten Conference Tournament, Ohio State, then loses to the worst team in all of the conference, last seeded Rutgers. They lose that night to Rutgers. Okay. So then about, 2 months later, this was about a month ago, Jaquan Lyle, the best guy, quote unquote, on the team, gets arrested for getting into some sort of scuffle at a bar near his hometown of Evansville, Indiana, and is being restrained, and then the cops come, and then he punches a cop car. I don't know. So, a bunch of stupid, drunken shenanigans by a 21-year-old kid. Which if he's 20, I'm not sure how he was at a bar drinking, but I'm going to assume he's 21. Do you know if he's 21 or not?
I have no idea. No.
Yeah, all right. But if anything, he ain't older than 21. So the shenanigans of a drunken, college-aged kid. And shortly after that, then, just a day or two later, Ohio State comes out and says, Well, the thing is, Jaquan wasn't even playing for us. Heck, he quit the team a month ago. Why, he quit a month ago. He wasn't even playing for Ohio State anymore. And I was listening to another guy who has a podcast, one of the local sports beat writers here. And this guy made a great point. He said, well, if that's the truth, why was Jaquan Lyle still posting pics of himself on social media wearing like his Ohio State uniform or Ohio State garb? So he's still posting pics after when Ohio State said he quit. He's still repping the team that he supposedly quit and used to play for. Okay, that's weird. Number one, number two, number three, number four, whatever. So you fast forward then up to just here last week.
Quick interjection.
And Thad is then, and it's announced that Thad is no longer the coach at Ohio State, and he claims that he's stepping down, but then they're asking him questions like, well, if you could still be the coach, would you still be the coach? And he says yes. So it's just like all of these just weird occurrences, coincidences, instances, whatever you want to call them, are all wrapped up in this riddle right now that I think there is a lot more to the story as to why Thad ultimately lost his job. Was it his decision? Was it Gene's? Was it mutual? What have you? Now, Brandon has a thought on this, Chris, and then I do want to hear your answer.
Not so much that. Again, I'll leave it to both you and Chris to comment. My question was, Andy, based off of the loss to the last seeded Rutgers, if I may just inquire as to who won last year's Big Ten tournament.
I can't remember. Chris, can you remember who won? I don't know. Wasn't it some team that smells like crap and they poop all over themselves a lot of the time?
That's about what I've come to expect from you. Okay.
No, Chris, but yeah, I mean, your thoughts on that. What do you think? Is there just too many coincidences and weird stuff that went on, or is this a lot simpler than it really is, and I'm just making a bigger deal out of it?
I think it's simpler than what it is. I think you're maybe making a big deal.
Okay.
The simple answer is Gene Smith is not a very good athletic director. That's the simple answer.
Well, thank you for that. I think all three of us will agree with that.
A la Dave Brandon, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about Gene Smith that, this guy has pretty much been terrible at every turn. People will say, well, isn't he the guy that hired Urban Meyer? I give him no credit for that.
A lot of people don't know. And I mean, it's been documented that he really had nothing to do with the hiring of Urban Meyer.
Yeah. I mean, if I was the athletic director at Ohio State, Urban would have came and played there. It wouldn't have mattered who it was. He wanted that job. It was his dream job. He grew up going to the freaking Horseshoe to watch Ohio State play, So it was where he wanted to go, and it had nothing to do with Gene Smith. And
well, yeah,
Gene
that's
Smith it's just been like one error after another his whole time at Ohio State, and this was another case. He shouldn't have came out and gave his support to Thad, and then that kind of put him in a box that he had to then give him another chance, even though he was terrible. So what happened is they sat down, they talked. Matta said, hey, I've got some recruiting battles that I think I'm going to win. That's going to bring in some good kids. That's going to turn the program around. There's a couple graduate transfers I'm in on. Just give me a chance. Give me one more year. I've got some guys to come in. They're going to turn the program around. And Gene was like, okay, all right, let's see. I'll give you another year, And then Matta one after another was losing these recruiting battles. Kids are decommitting. I mean, they had one of the top kids in Ohio, and I think his name's Baisley, something like that.
Yes.
He was a stud Ohio kid, a good Big Ten quality player. He saw how bad, the program was looking and decommits. So I mean, Matta was not only was he not adding kids, he's losing kids. Jaquan Lyle gets kicked off the team.
But no, he quit the team. He quit the team before, Chris. Remember that. He quit an entire month before.
So like I said, he got kicked off the team, and they they were losing out on graduate transfers. I mean, there was kids that
Yeah, he went to Howard, for Pete's sake.
Yeah, I mean, there was kids that were going to Ohio State. Like you could name your playing time if you came to Ohio State. They had kids that were fighting to get that went to Florida State to be the 15th guy on scholarship there, where they were pretty much not going to get any playing time. They could have played 20, 30 minutes at Ohio State.
Right.
And he just couldn't get anybody to come, and Matta, he's losing all these battles. Gene Smith saw what was going on, and he just couldn't take it anymore. He finally stepped in. He went and had a meeting. Well, as they said, he went and had a meeting with Matta, said, "What the hell? You said you were going to bring in these guys, and you're not getting it done." And I guess the meeting went so poorly that they came out of that with, Gene saying, you're going to have to go. Now, this whole thing that he resigned or he retired or whatever, it's very clear if you watch the press conference that if it were up to just Matta, he'd still be coaching at Ohio State. So he's being forced out.
Yeah,
and,
I thought he was sick.
Well,
I'm kidding. Again, I'm
the sickness is the reason why my best guess. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the sickness is my reason why he's declined.
Yes. The illness, he's legitimately not feeling well, right, Chris?
Right. So,
and by no means do I want your audience to feel that I am this black-hardened just ass.
Well, I think they already believe that. So it's okay.
I guess it's inherent, being that I support Michigan. But my question for you two, honestly, the question that keeps circling my mind is, what is both your takes on the matter? Is this premature in the Thad Matta era as we knew it?
Oh God, no.
Is this overdue? And if so, by how many seasons? That's what I'm. Again, as a bystander, I'm just curious what you guys are thinking. Is this were you elated? Well, maybe elated is too much. Were you okay?
So,
I saw that coming. It's about time. But please elaborate on that.
Yeah, Chris, I'll let you take this one first. Go ahead.
All right. So the timing was absolutely perfect. If it were 2 months earlier, 3 months earlier, it's
yes,
the year, as far as what year he was fired after this season was the right time to go. Was the decline not measurable until this year? Did we not see him, steadily declining? Yes, it didn't. But based on him being quite possibly the best coach in the program's history, certainly the best coach in my lifetime, you had to give him the benefit of the doubt. You had to give him some time to try to turn the ship around.
Yep.
But this year it was okay.
And I'll agree to that, Chris.
Yeah. So it was time, but then it's okay. You just lost to Rutgers. The season is over. You didn't even get invited to the NIT. I mean, my God, the NIT snubbed you. What? Now is the perfect time, and they didn't do it. Yeah. And then you wait. I mean, honestly, Gene Smith, it was so incompetent to not do it then and to do it now. When it happened now, the speculation was that Gene Smith, the only reason it occurred now is he had somebody else lined up. And because you just wouldn't do it now if you didn't have somebody lined up. And then it basically came out that he didn't have anybody lined up. He just did it now. Just he had that meeting with Matta and walked out and said, I got to fire him now. Had nobody lined up, and then goes out and tries to hire, Greg McDermott from Creighton.
Ugh.
And thank God McDermott turns the job down.
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, Gene Smith may be the luckiest freaking guy I know. That guy should go buy a lottery ticket or something, because he gets Urban Meyer through no fault of his own, and then he completely botches this firing of Matta, and offers a guy who was Ohio State can do better than Greg McDermott. Maybe McDermott would have been okay, but he would not have brought the program back to the level it was where Matta had it, during his heyday. It would have been, he would have just been maybe an okay Ohio State coach through history. The ceiling on him was really low. There was at best, he's a base hit. There was no chance of him being a home run. And that's the guy Matta was going to go with. And he's so lucky that McDermott turns the job down.
I know.
And then he gets Holtmann, who Holtmann, I think, is at least a solid double.
Better choice than McDermott.
Much better. I mean, Holtmann actually has the chance to be kind of a home run guy, to be a guy who can get it back to the level that Matta had it. Which to me, I don't expect somebody to come in and turn Ohio State into like Duke or Chapel Hill. I expect if somebody can just come in and get the program back to where it was when Matta had it clicking on all cylinders, I would be thrilled with that. I think that's like pretty much about as good as we can expect to have. I mean, because Ohio State's a football school, they're not a basketball school.
Yep.
And to have it, at that where they're like a perennial top 10 kind of school, have a good shot at winning the Big Ten every year, have a shot at winning it all, being a Final Four type team, at least every few years. That's about best case scenario,
Chris. I mean, I hear you out loud. So let me take a litmus test for you guys. What is upcoming year? You have a new coach incoming, fresh out of Butler. What is the level of success that either of you hope? I'm hoping to derive some kind of consensus here, but I don't expect any. What do you foresee as being the OSU faithful's level of success? What measure of success can you take away from this year and say, okay, that's, you know what? A lot of respect to Matta. Chris, as you said, he was in your lifetime the best coach OSU had. What have you? What's next though? Moving forward? What's the next chapter?
Chris, and I think I know what you're going to say personally, with the kids that are returning and the one kid that is coming in this season, two kids that are coming in this year. I think that if Ohio State with a new coach and a team that, let's face it, Chris, like you said, I mean, guys that, had it narrowed down between, the Columbus School for Girls and Ohio State, maybe them too. If Chris Holtmann can take a ragtag bunch of young kids and get them in the NIT and win just one game, I'll be happy. And if he goes 500 in the conference this year, I think that's a success. I think that is definitely a good indication of things to come. Chris?
Well, yeah, I mean, the cupboard is so bare right now. I mean, it is absolutely bare. I mean, he lost an entire recruiting class. They had that top class you mentioned, and like all five of them, like within 18 months, all five of them are not even in the program anymore. Just astounding. So, the cupboard is so bare. I mean, unless Caleb Wesson comes in and is like the second coming of Terrence Dials, and they can kind of build the team, around him this year. Yeah. I'm not expecting any kind of success for them this year. And I'm completely
just being honest.
Yeah. And I'm ready to just like say whatever happens this year, I don't care how bad it is. We're not going to hold this against you.
Yeah, absolutely. What if they don't win a single friggin' game? Seriously, lose every single game. Are we still pissed off and like, okay, maybe Holtmann was a bad choice? Or should we legitimately expect something like that?
To your point, Andy, and Chris, I'm more or less just kind of lobbing the same softball up for you to crush here. What if you have a basketball version of the Luke Fickell era? I mean, is that the
expectation? That's absolutely what I am expecting. A 500 year. Yes.
And I have to say this again. I love Michigan football. I absolutely do. Have since I was old enough to understand the difference between what you believe is football and what I believe is football.
Okay.
But no, the scoreboard said Michigan won, but at the same time, dude, it was Luke Fickell. I mean, the guy did what he could, but that was not an Ohio State team. A win is a win is a win. I understand that, but no one took pride away from that day. So we're just level setting. Yeah. But the question being, this season in basketball, if Ohio State has a very Luke Fickell-esque, if I may, season, is that understandable? Was that the expectation?
Absolutely, 100%. For me, it is, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're only going to be favored in a handful of games, and I don't expect them to win any of the ones that they're not favored in. So I'm sure they'll play like Walsh University or something like that to open the year, and there's going to be some games that, like, if they lose to them, I'll be a little worried. But even if they do, it's just like I said, he gets a pass this year. Holtmann gets an absolute pass this year.
Yeah.
And maybe it's still bare, and he's not going to have a chance to get like his own kids in. And even then, like the class of 2018, my God, they start signing in what, November?
Something like that.
I think
it's
November
like
signing day, or maybe that's the early signing day. He's got like no time to put together even the class of 2018. And even if he did have a time to put it together, we're still talking about just a freshman class. So I mean, you got to give this guy, I would say, even you almost have to write off the first 2 years, and hope that by the third year, then you start looking for improvements. Okay, now I want to start seeing, he doesn't have to come out and be Final Four by his third year, but I want to start seeing steady improvements, And I will say this, one of the things that Holtmann is known for, Matta was absolutely not known for it, is developing the kids he has. His kids would come in and show steady improvement year after year, and definitely look like a better basketball player from one year to the next. So, we could see maybe by the second year, just taking the kids he's got and getting him to play better than what Matta did, there'll be some nice improvements. But, I'm completely willing to give him time to develop these kids.
So I think we definitely both agree that Chris Holtmann was, for being in the position that Gene Smith put himself into, Chris Holtmann was a damn good hire, not only because of the short window frame of time that Gene Smith said to the players, supposedly he made the comment to them, within 48 to 72 hours, I'm going to have your next head coach. And he did. So not only, I think, was Chris Holtmann a good hire in that regard, that he gave himself such little time to find somebody, but, I mean, it seems like this Chris Holtmann guy, 3 years at Gardner-Webb, were his first 3 years as being a head coach, and then 3 years at Butler. And if you look at Butler's record, especially the fact he took him to the Sweet 16 last year, and I believe he took him to the Sweet 16 his first year at Butler, and really had some great success. And it should also be noted that Chris Holtmann coached with John Gross, a former teammate of his at Taylor University back in the day. So John Gross and Chris Holtmann played basketball together at Taylor University. Gross was the first person that he hired onto his staff when Gross was at OU. So here's a guy, he's from Kentucky, played basketball in Indiana, coached with John Gross at OU. He's a Midwestern guy. Has had success, obviously, as 6 years of being a head coach, and is now in a spot where this is the biggest job he's ever had. And I'm hoping, much like what Thad Matta did, his, first, 6, 7 years, 8 years really, as being head coach at the Ohio State University, he took off, he ran with it, and he'd had no problems coming in and doing as well as he did. That is Thad Matta. And I'm expecting the same out of Chris Holtmann. I'm like you. I'm not expecting much out of him this year. I think, to your point, Brandon, very Luke Fickell-esque season, very Luke Fickell-esque. In fact, if he goes 500 in the Big Ten or overall and gets in the NIT, I consider that almost better than a Luke Fickell-esque kind of season. So I'm looking forward to this hire. I think it was a good hire, Chris, and I think he's honestly going to do some good things.
Real quick anecdotal question, Andy. So if you're in agreement, essentially the season is nothing to write home about. How do you foresee that? So as an MBA, this is what I think about on a daily basis. So you have things that are obviously impacting your bottom line.
Yeah.
Your basis for said revenue.
Yeah.
Is nothing to be compared to even not even having an NIT invitation.
Yeah.
So that being the basis for last year's success, what do you foresee being the shots attendance?
Oh,
I mean, are we just talking? These are
these are OSU students. They're taking in the experience. There's nothing to be of concern. Again, and I'm just very curious here.
Yeah.
And again, this comes from a place where I watched Dave Brandon, if you will, if you get the pun there, to where former Domino's CEO, and you as well as I, and I'm sure Chris knows that at sometimes I'm sure they just literally slap some marinara sauce on the box and sent it out, because that's essentially what it tasted like as soon as you bought it.
Pretty much.
His only contribution was retrofitting the house, the big house. I mean, honestly, capturing 30% more. And again, I'm going into football. I apologize, gentlemen. But where I'm getting at is, what do you expect to be the attendance fallout from this decision? Point blank.
In an interesting question, Brandon. I tell you what, though, Chris, did you have any further opinions on Chris Holtmann and what you felt that this hire is going to do for Ohio State?
Well, as you know, Andy, I wanted Archie Miller, and I was furious when we didn't get him.
Thank you.
Archie Miller was the perfect candidate for Ohio State.
Perfect.
I mean,
perfect.
He was absolutely, lit the world on fire at Dayton.
And I think you were going into that when you said, had Smith made this decision a couple of months ago, we could be talking about Archie Miller right now and not Chris Holtmann.
Right.
Let's face it.
Yeah, all indications were that Archie Miller, he said things like his dream school was Ohio State. So, we could have had him. And instead, Indiana gets, a hotshot coach from a small school in Ohio, when Ohio State gets a hotshot coach from a small school in Indiana, I guess.
Well, Archie Miller was the perfect situation, if you will. Former coach for Thad Matta at Ohio State, who said Ohio State was his dream job. You don't get a drop in the bucket all that often, and that you're absolutely right, dude. Archie Miller, drop in the bucket. And how do I feel about Thad? Everything going down the way it went down, I think it sucks. I miss Thad, to your point as well from earlier. One of the, if not the greatest coaches, not only in my lifetime, certainly in my lifetime, but in Ohio State history. And I'm torn on this one, because to see the way that it ended with Thad, it really bums me out. But I'm excited about a new beginning in Ohio State basketball, because the program was definitely not heading in the right direction, and it was not going to get better anytime soon. But if this had happened a couple of months ago, I would have loved to have seen Archie Miller. So, please, go on ahead.
Yeah, so, that they missed the opportunity to get the perfect guy for the job.
Yep.
Now, and he was fortunate. He was lucky that McDermott turned the job down and Holtmann was available and took the job, because Holtmann has the kind of talent that he could be, maybe just as good as Archie. I think Archie was the better fit, because I think, for one, he's got just great relationships with all the high school coaches, and that recruiting we talk so much about. He's going to step in and nail down Ohio right away. And, the good thing with Holtmann is he also recruits Ohio, has a lot of ties in the state already, and already has, for the class of 2018, committed to Butler, I believe the top kid in Ohio. Will that kid follow him to Ohio State?
Yeah, the kid out of Massillon.
Yeah. We can only hope he follows him to Ohio State. I don't know, but at this current point, he's currently committed to Butler. But, so, it may be, my point is, Gene Smith is lucky, because even though he's completely dropped the ball, he's completely mishandled the whole situation, he still ended up, the end result, I think, is probably pretty good. It might not be any noticeable difference between Holtmann and Archie. This could be the start of a great rivalry, with Indiana and Ohio State being back to where their fan bases want them to be, and playing regularly for the Big Ten title. Hopefully it's something like that. But, we'll see. But, that was another thing that stung back, at the end of the season, Indiana goes out and gets Archie Miller, the guy who Ohio State's his dream school, the guy who's the perfect coach for Ohio State. It's like now not only did you miss out on the perfect coach, but now we got to face him every year, with him going to Indiana. So that kind of, was like insult to injury,
Exactly.
But yeah, I'm like you, I feel bad for Thad. Didn't want to see it go out down like this, but I'm excited because there's something to be excited about now. I mean, before under Thad, it was just like, okay, another year of sucking, I guess losing to Rutgers is as best as I can hope for now,
Yeah. And to Brandon, to answer your question, and Chris, that's absolutely 100%. I agree with all of that. What's attendance going to be like? I can't see it being any worse than what it was this year. I think it might still dip down a little bit. I mean, they were averaging what, Chris, on 7,000-8,000 people a home game. I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah.
Is it going to be worse? Probably. Does that really bother me? Not so much. I could care less about attendance figures, quite honestly. I know, the Gene Smiths of the world care about attendance, and the board members and people like that love to see, obviously, attendance figures through the roof because it means more money. They don't want to see attendance down. But to me, the attendance is going to take maybe a little bit of a hit, or stay the same. Chris, I don't know how you feel on that matter, but that's just pretty much, my 2 cents on it.
Well, the reason I care about attendance is recruits care about attendance. If you're coming on a recruiting trip to Ohio State and you're sitting and watching a game and it's just dead, And
that is fair. That is a good point. Yeah, you want that place packed and jammed. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I do love to see a packed arena screaming and going nuts. I don't want to see, 2,000 people sitting there on their hands and, literally knitting a blanket or something. But,
And it's a good recruiting tool for football as well. At least Urban, he used to take the kids to basketball games back when the program was decent and the place was packed. I think he's kind of stopped doing that because he saw that it probably wasn't going to help his case any to take the football kids to a basketball game. They'd be like, well, Jesus Christ, what's going on here? The place is empty, So, it helps. But overall, next year, attendance wise, record wise, however you want to measure next year, I'm ready to just, give Holtmann a complete pass for next year. So, and really the next 2 years. So I'm not worried about the attendance.
So yes or no, the two of you will watch every game this year?
I can't promise I'll watch every game. I'll try and watch every game, absolutely, but it's still going to be tough. It's still
compared to a normal season when you watch.
I would say I'll probably watch about as much Ohio State basketball this upcoming season as I would have, like I did last year. I watched just about every game, maybe not every one because of a work schedule or a thing going on, but yeah, I'm still going to, turn them on and check them out.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to be watching every game next year. So that's
I'm more in line with Chris here because
call me a fair weather fan. I really don't care.
It's, and again, the only thing, not as a basketball anything, more along the lines of football. Been there with Hoke. Okay. Unless you're going to put a headset on, I don't want to watch anymore.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean?
Hey, and that is a fair statement to make, Chris, about being a fair weather fan. I'll root for Ohio State when it comes to soccer, hockey, lacrosse, baseball, but I don't even know what Ohio State's record in baseball ended up being this year. I don't even know how well they did in the Big Ten tournament. I don't. I have no clue. Track and field, who was good and who wasn't, I don't know. I can tell you, I know the men's lacrosse team made the national championships and got beat against Maryland, and I think the score was 13-10 or something like that. Or because I actually did watch some of it, but you know what? But it just it's primarily football and basketball for me.
Did you watch any of the women's softball national championship?
No, I don't even know who played in it. Who played in it?
Oh Christ! I watched Oklahoma and Florida
Why? Why are you watching women's friggin' softball?
And I'll tell you, good sir, my wife and I were at a bar, and it was literally
the only thing on.
Yes, unless I wanted to succumb to this ridiculous sitcom. I couldn't even tell you what it was. I gave it about 5 minutes worth of attention, and it was, I would rather watch the women's softball tournament. And I got to tell you, call me a misogynist, call me what you will. I'm just going to put out a couple key points here that I took away from it. Very lackluster. I mean, wow. As a former catcher, I was always taught that your first reaction, if there is anything in the realm of possibility of a pop fly, boom goes your helmet. Like, you're not looking around like a
boom goes the dynamite.
Thank you, my good man. And you literally, you have these, if I recall correctly, Florida was ranked number 1. I believe Oklahoma was ranked top 10. And you had both of these catchers who literally just jumped up and were arbitrarily looking into the sky. Like, where's it at? Like, it's going to leap right out at you. Maybe a bigger question is, why is the damn thing neon yellow? Is that necessary? It's just like the WNBA. And again, I'm sounding like a misogynist here. Call me Trump, call me whatever you need to. But is it necessary? Like, why do you want to be so different?
Because some people just want to be different, I guess. But you know what, though? This is a podcast talking about Ohio State basketball, not women's softball, for Pete's sake. But the lack thereof. Nonetheless, Chris, I think we've hit that time, though, where we have pretty much exhausted ourselves talking about, now today, a lot of different sports. We've covered girls softball. We've covered lacrosse. We've covered Michigan sports, for Pete's sake. And Lord knows we probably talked about 5 minutes worth of Michigan sports longer than we would have ever had we not had a Michigan fan in the house.
I'll be waiting for the increase in stats.
Yeah, we're going to definitely see a lot more hits out of the Michigan contingent on this one. But Mr. Stefanick, before we jump off the microphones here, was there anything else you can think of that we did not cover that you wanted to throw out there?
No, I think we've pretty much killed it.
Yeah, well, let's kill it some more, folks. That has been the Buckeye Leafcast. I'm your host, Andy Evans. Across the other side of the microphone, the Intergalactic Buckeye fan himself, Mr. Chris Stefanick. Once again, sir, thank you for jumping on and doing a summertime basketball podcast. The only reason really we're doing this, let's face it, is because of the big news that happened. We certainly don't talk a lot of basketball a lot, nor do we really do anything in the summertime. It's a hot, sticky one up here in Central Ohio today, as I'm sure it is down there on the East Coast in Carolina. But nonetheless, I want to thank you, sir, for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk a little shop. And I also want to thank my man Brandon Richey, the Michigan fan, the Michigan man, the piece of crap otherwise that he is, for coming on and hanging out and joining us for this edition of the Buckeye Leafcast. So, Mr. Stefanick, thank you, sir.
Yep. Hey, and if you would like to hear some more Chris Stefanick, I do have another podcast that I run called Choice Conversations. It's a personal development podcast, and I covered various topics in that field to basically just help you to improve all areas of your life. So come on over and check it out, choiceconversations.com.
There it is. Have a choice conversation with Mr. Stefanick. Don't talk about sports. Well, I mean, you can if you want, but, get on there, have a choice conversation with Mr. Stefanick, be it whatever you want. And I'm sure coming up summertime, there's a lot of things you're probably going to be chatting with some folks about, some good life-altering, life-meaningful type conversations with people. So looking forward to hearing what you guys have coming forth. And Mr. Richey, yes, thank you, sir. Want to throw props your way for coming and hanging out with me for a couple hours to see and hear what Chris and I do when it comes to this podcast. And this was not the only reason, though, that you came. You and I are actually going to be getting into a little venture ourselves. So real quick, why don't you holler that out to our peeps?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't realize how appropriate the segue from women's softball to to that question was. But yeah, so the mouth and the brain coming to you in the next, what would you say, a couple months here, being generous?
I hope so. Yep.
Absolutely. This is absolutely not speaking directly towards OSU basketball or basketball for any matter, that is. If anybody has been around and seen my short stature, that would be abundantly apparent. We're looking more towards anything OSU, Michigan, rivalry-oriented, touching on some political endeavors this country is taking, as well as must-knows for the layperson. Essentially, it's everything on your way to work. What is being talked about? What are you going to bring to the table for those around you in your cubicle farm of a job? And let's just be quite frank, that is the majority of this country right now. Going to give you a couple things to arm yourselves with. Start talking about it, bringing it up, and then a couple things that it's just going to be, being just frank, things to talk about that are just fun to talk about. So I appreciate the opportunity to just hear you guys out. Again, my strong suit, definitely not in either of your arenas. But again, appreciate the opportunity. And again, that's the mouth and the brain coming to you in the next month or so. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, Mr. Richey and I, he wanted to come. Actually, I kind of wanted him to come sit along and see how it's done, Chris. I told him, hey, for a couple of guys who like to get on the microphone, hack around, and talk a little bit, you can kind of see what we do when we do this podcast. So hopefully, Brandon, it's been educational. And Chris, because of the fact that you like to have choice conversations with people above and beyond sports, and because Mr. Richey and I, we do plan on talking a lot about things aside from sports. In fact, it's probably going to be more politically driven, more kind of along what you do, Chris, with Choice Conversations, just talk about life issues and just things going on in general. Don't get me wrong. We're going to talk about some sports, especially when it comes to football season. But, Chris, when it comes to the side of politics, I would love to have you on this show. We could even do a cross blend between the two, and I think that would be a lot of fun.
Speaking of, Chris, I've heard you're more of the libertarian mindset. We're going to get along just fine.
Yeah, Mr. Richey, in fact, I would probably say, quite honestly, the three of us here, I mean, I probably – well, this is a conversation for another time, but I would say that in the case of libertarianism, I think the three of us can definitely have some interesting conversations. But
it's not too that's not being – exclusive of any other opinion or view. It's just, it's just that, talking about it. Okay, what makes sense? What doesn't make sense? When you hear people discussing their views and they're so emphatic about it, what is it about that maybe you feel you don't know? Like, what's intriguing about that? That's the mouth and the brain, ladies and gentlemen. And Chris, if you bring that libertarian view, you can bolster my views as well, because I feel like we're going to get along just well in that respect. Bring it, my friend. We're more than happy to have you on.
Sounds good.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, in that aspect, folks, we're Audi 5. This has been the Buckeye Leafcast. He's the Intergalactic Buckeye Fan, Chris Stefanick. I'm Andy Evans. Special guest today, Mr. Brandon Richey. And in honor of having a special guest, Chris, we're going to leave him like we always do, but we're going to do it emphatically, sir. So on that note, let's leave him like we always do, baby. O-H!
I-O!
Go Bucks!
I want to go back to Ohio State, to old Columbus town, to the stadium to hear the band by far the